it has always been extremely complicated, problematic, tense, fraught with issues. But there have been chapters where Indian and Pakistani leaders have been able to break bread, with a reasonable amount of trust. And I think Musharraf, in many ways, was a symptom of the very rock bottom, direction in which relations were heading between the two countries at the turn of the millennium. The Kargil War, the years thereafter, Operation Parakram, when our parliament was attacked, the huge forward deployment that took place, along the line of control and the international border. It was a war-like situation. All of these have only deteriorated an already complicated situation. I should also point out that Pervez Musharraf, who has always been instrumental in denying Pakistan-sponsored terror, continued to do that even after he left Pakistan, after he left office. He continued to point a finger at India, India's raw research and analysis wing, our intelligence agencies, and propagate that bogey that terror attacks that took place in Pakistan were the work of India, that the fact that India constantly blamed groups like the Lashkar-e-Taiba and the Jaish-e-Mohammed was a figment of our imagination. So that entire propaganda, Pervez Musharraf embodied to the hilt. Not for a moment was he inconsistent in the proposition that the Pakistan-sponsored terror was an Indian enterprise and that Pakistan had nothing to do with it. So his methods, his dealings and experience with the ISI, his relationship with the civil authorities in Pakistan, so-called civil authorities in Pakistan, his dabbling in the tribal areas of Pakistan, the manner in which he amplified and helped the Taliban in Afghanistan. All of these factors, played a really, really big role in what would happen in the years following it. And remember that shortly after the Kargil War, there was the 9/11 attacks. Then you had Operation Parakram. So this was a man who was the dictator of Pakistan, the leader of Pakistan, at a time when the entire world was changing. And I don't think anyone can ignore the role that he played in making the world a much, much worse place. The fact that two nuclear neighbors, had their daggers drawn against each other, was principally because of Pakistan. The Jaish-e-Mohammed's attack on the parliament happened very much under Pervez Musharraf's watch, and practically bringing two nuclear neighbors to a confrontation, to a hot war, was something that will go down in history as something that Musharraf himself presided over. So this was a man who, far from having defended his country well, was someone who lost a huge number of military personnel for absolutely nothing in Kargil. There was no way that operation was going to be successful, which is why nearly all history books call it a misadventure. So I think Musharraf will be mourned by his relatives, his some admirers. I'm sure many in Pakistan still admire him. I wonder how many. But at the end of the day, this is a man who worsened Pakistan's reputation in the world. He was not very trusted, across the world. He was a person who, many world leaders, not just Pakistan, didn't have many good things to say about. And, in his famous visit to the United States, he went on to the Jon Stewart show as well in an effort to sort of craft a people-friendly and television-friendly image. But at the end of the day, I think it was pretty much a defeated move because
Shiv, on the broadcast, joining us now is Ahmed Qureshi, an analyst. Mr. Qureshi, a very tumultuous time for India. When Pervez Musharraf was the head of Pakistan, we did see the Kargil War, we saw the attack on the parliament. Do you believe he will be remembered in the same light in Pakistan, or do you believe his closeness with Taliban, the corruption charges, all those things have made him non-existential almost in Pakistan?
Well, President Musharraf was a dynamic personality and a man of stature. I'm sure he will be remembered as a man of stature both inside Pakistan and also internationally. And also, by the way, he's remembered inside Pakistan as someone who tried to actually make peace with India. And I fully understand that there will be many different analyses and references to Kargil and many other things. But the fact of the matter is, and I was just listening to the gentleman speaking just before me, and I respect his opinion, but the fact of the matter is, as someone who's in Islamabad, and as someone who meets and moves around in the think tank circles of Pakistan with retired foreign service and military officers, General Pervez Musharraf is often referred to as someone actually who tried to change Pakistani policy and tried to bring the people of Pakistan and India closer. Yes, we have a very serious political conflict. We have a very serious geostrategic conflict in Kashmir. But General Musharraf, and I've worked with him, I was at that time, I'm basically a journalist, but at that time I was working for the government, and I was close to his media team, and I know firsthand that he had his ideas were basically that the people of Pakistan and the people of India need to be friends, and we need to move forward, we need to resolve conflict. He had many, many Indian friends, and many, many Indian, prominent Indians can come forward and say, yes, we were friends of Pervez Musharraf, and that he had very warm views about India. Yes, he had very solid views when it came to the geostrategy, when it came to foreign policy, when it came to politics, the issues between India and Pakistan, the two countries, the two states. But at the same time, he had very warm views when it came to the people of India and the people of Pakistan. And he was a gentleman officer. He was a gentleman officer. He had expressed good opinions about his counterparts in the Indian military, for example. And later on, when he became president of Pakistan, his opinions on his counterparts, the people he met in the Indian government or interacted with directly or indirectly. So basically, Pervez Musharraf will be remembered as a gentleman officer, as a man of stature. I was part of his delegation when he visited China in Beijing in 2005 and again in 2006. And I was there when he met President Putin of Russia. And at that time, President Putin had been in power for about 5 or 6 years, and he still retained the sternness on his face when he met foreign leaders. But I am witness to the warmth in which President Putin received President Musharraf, and the bonhomie and the friendliness that we saw in that meeting. It was so indicative, and I witnessed the same thing when President Musharraf, for example, received President George W. Bush in Islamabad, and both of them held a press conference in the garden of the President House in Islamabad. Extreme bonhomie, extreme friendship. So President Musharraf actually, and the same thing goes really to his iconic historical move to step forward and extend his hand of friendship physically to late Prime Minister of India, Atal Bihari Vajpayee Sahab, and that iconic image of him also. So the man was and let's not forget that he had a very, very difficult task of changing the regional dynamic at a very, very difficult time, very extremely difficult time. He tried to deal with extremism and terrorism.
Mr. Qureshi, I'll have to, just button here. I am joined by Fawad Qureshi, Fawad Chaudhry, who's a former minister of Pakistan. Mr. Chaudhry, do you believe the mortal remains of the former president will be brought back to Pakistan, or do you think that chapter is over? His mortal remains will not be brought to Pakistan?
Well, I worked with Pervez Musharraf very closely. I was his spokesperson. I can tell you he was a very proud Pakistani. He was a very proud soldier, and he was the man who led Pakistan in a very difficult times. Hailing from Delhi, his parents migrated from Delhi to Pakistan, and they struggled to become, and he became the chief of army staff from a very common family. So he always took proud of his middle class values, and his tenure was much more democratic than we have today in Pakistan. His tenure was much more democratic than what we had from 97 to 99, Nawaz Sharif era in Pakistan. He never incarcerated his opponents for having different opinion, and despite that, his family gone through the rigors of migration. He always wanted a good relationship with India, and Vajpayee and Musharraf was very close to resolve Kashmir, and unfortunately, the establishment has actually not let that happen. Otherwise, Pakistan-India history would have been different today. So he was a tall man. Unfortunately, his friends were not that tall, so in the end, he suffered because of that, because the people who he actually relied betrayed him. But he was, I must say, he was the most democratic dictator I come of. And today, the Pakistani, what we see media in Pakistan, there is no struggle behind Pakistani media's independence. It's the only ideas of Pervez Musharraf that actually created this huge media in Pakistan, and we have this diversity of opinion. So he was a tall man. No two opinions about that.
But Mr. Chaudhary, why didn't General Musharraf choose to remain in Pakistan? Why did he choose to move out?
Sorry, say it again.
Why did General Musharraf choose to leave the country? Why didn't he stay in Pakistan?
Because when Ali and Nawaz Sharif, when they came, they really wanted to kill him. So his family was threatened, he was threatened, and it was, that's what I said, that his friends actually betrayed him at that time. So both Nawaz Sharif, especially Nawaz Sharif, was very, I would say, he's not the man who forgets or forgives his enemies. So he blamed Pervez Musharraf for his ouster in 1999. He never forgot that, and they came up with fake cases against him. And he was prosecuted as this present government is going to PTI. And Imran Khan and myself and others, they are facing these cases. And he was also, Pervez Musharraf was tried under Article 6, and then they have the same, the judiciary, a judge, vice judges, and there's no other but to leave the country.
I think we've lost that line. With Fawad Chaudhary. But he's saying that the legacy of Musharraf was not a complicated one, and that he was still a hero in Pakistan. I highly doubt that he was very much a hero in Pakistan. He was still a person who was deeply distrusted. He was cowardly enough to leave the country instead of choosing to remain in the country. Why would anyone who was a president of Pakistan, the army chief of Pakistan, dictator of Pakistan, choose to move out of Pakistan? This is something that most people don't understand. But that goes to the heart of both the Pakistani system as well as General Pervez Musharraf, because at the end of the day, you've got to save your own skin. You may have been wearing the highest uniform at one point, but when that uniform comes off, you're basically easy meat. For the people you've trampled on your rise. So General Pervez Musharraf obviously found it a safer option to get the hell out of Pakistan after he demitted office as president and moved to the Middle East. He did. It must be said, he did come back to Pakistan quite often. He visited Pakistan. After all, his extended family and many supporters are still in Pakistan. But at the end of the day, he made that very telling decision not to remain in his country. It was not his motherland, because India is where he was born. He was in fact born in Delhi, in a haveli in Daryaganj, in North Delhi, and it's a haveli that I visited. As a matter of fact, when Pervez Musharraf came to India to meet for that summit with Prime Minister Manmohan Singh, I was actually one of the journalists who had visited his home in Daryaganj at the time, there was a woman called Kashmiro who was his nanny when she was very young, and she remembered him very fondly as well. So he had a deep India connect, which is what makes the entire the idea of all the things he did as far as India is concerned, that much more difficult to digest. The fact that he betrayed Atal Bihari Vajpayee, the fact that he lied about his intentions just months before the Kargil operations began, are a blemish on a man's reputation. And I think he takes those blemishes to the grave with him at this point of time. So we'll have to see what kind of mourning, what kind of state ceremonies General Pervez Musharraf gets, because he was a complicated figure in Pakistan. But he was, after all, the president and the chief of army staff of that country. So we'll have to see what Prime Minister Shahbaz Sharif and the army leadership in Pakistan decides to do as far as ceremonials are concerned. It's not clear yet whether Pervez Musharraf will be buried in Pakistan or whether he will be buried in Dubai, the country that he fled to after demitting office. So we'll have to see where that is, Aishwarya. We're awaiting more information on that.
Waiting for some more clarity on what exactly will happen with the mortal remains of the former president of Pakistan, Pervez Musharraf. But yes, Shiv, you were also speaking about the fact that he is someone who is thought as someone who stabbed India in the back, even as our former Prime Minister Atal Bihari Vajpayee was trying to make sure that there is some kind of friendship between India and Pakistan. You were pointing out to us the fact that
yeah, absolutely. Aishwarya, in his book, the book that Pervez Musharraf wrote, called "In the Line of Fire," a memoir, Pervez Musharraf, brought that book out sometime in 2006, if I remember correctly. And in that book, he's painted this extravagant picture of how he's such an amazing visionary, and that he was a crafty general, and that all these things that we are looking back at now with a critical eye, were actually qualities that were worthy of admiration in himself, according to him in his book. And I remember reviewing this book for the newspaper I used to work for at the time, and it was unbelievable to so many in India who had covered the Kargil War, tracked the Kargil War, that this was a man who had taken his country into a very, very costly misadventure. It's a war that damaged the Pakistani economy. It's a war that killed hundreds, if not thousands, of Pakistani soldiers who they shamefully and disgracefully abandoned on Indian soil, refusing to take them back and bury them. It was all because of this man. It was because of Pervez Musharraf, who put his own reputation, who put his own skin as someone who was a denier of the Kargil War. He put that above the honor and prestige of Pakistani soldiers. He betrayed his own army. He betrayed the families of Pakistani ex-servicemen. He betrayed the ethos of the Pakistani military when he abandoned his soldiers. So let's call a spade a spade. He is no more, and I think condolences are very necessary to the family of Musharraf and his admirers. But as far as India is concerned, from a prism of national security, this was a man who needlessly drew hundreds of Indian soldiers and officers to their death. Captain Vikram Batra, so many others, Vijayan Thapar, all of whom were part of that operation in Kargil. So this man has blood on his hands. It was an operation that was needless. There are all kinds of murderous justifications that Musharraf and his band of thugs, put forward to justify what was attempted in the Kargil Heights. But as India Today covered at the time, as our channels have, and all our reporters and journalists from India covered at that time, this was an army that, even today refuses to acknowledge, was an army operation. They refuse to acknowledge that this was a misadventure. They call it a successful mission, even having lost so many people. It was a 50-day war, Aishwarya, in which in which the Pakistan army was trounced. It was destroyed. Their reputation was in tatters. The world knew what was going on, and yet this one man, Pervez Musharraf, who you see in these pictures above of him at the India Today conclave, many years ago, having completely put his army out to dry. Because at the end of the day, if as an army chief, if as a army general, you take your forces to war, it is under the tacit understanding that this is going to be an operation that you will come out of covered in glory. It's something that you will win. You will meet your military objectives. You will, the world will admire you. The world will applaud what you've done. What you've done is a righteous thing as far as Pakistan is concerned. But there is not a single person, not a single country, not a single world leader. Some people in Pakistan, I'm sure, who believe it was a good idea, but most people, I would hazard, think it was a terrible, ill-conceived, cunning, cynical move by General Pervez Musharraf, and the blood of everyone that perished in that operation, Indians and Pakistanis, is on their hands. What kind of conscience could General Pervez Musharraf have had to live with that he allowed hundreds of Pakistani soldiers to lie unclaimed on Indian soil and to be forcibly buried by Indian forces? The Indian side was basically begging Pervez Musharraf's Pakistan to say that these are your soldiers. They've been lost in war. You have to give them an honorable burial. And yet those soldiers were not taken back to Pakistan, all to save Nawaz Sharif and Pervez Musharraf's skin, having been the architects of this ill-advised operation. And therefore, I say that Pervez Musharraf's reputation was pretty much one of a rat. He was a person who was in love with himself. He was a megalomaniac. He thought he was the bee's knees as far as military operations was concerned. He was taught a terrible lesson in Kargil. He was shown that he was not only too big for his boots, he couldn't even execute a limited skirmish on the border, leave alone a full-scale war. And yet here was a person who, talked the big talk as far as India and Pakistan was concerned. So India gave Pakistan a bloody nose in Kargil. But let's be very realistic. Kargil was terribly expensive for India as well. We lost hundreds of soldiers and promising officers in that operation. So by no means was it an absolute victory by India. We evicted the Pakistanis. We evicted Pervez Musharraf's men from those heights. But it came at a terrible cost. And that cost is still being felt by so many families here in India. So there was no need for Kargil to happen. And the reason, Aishwarya, that we talk over and over again about Kargil is because that is what defined Pervez Musharraf for India. Because everything else was the usual bread and butter as far as India and Pakistan is concerned. But Kargil brought an already turbulent relationship to absolute rock bottom. And in many ways, the trust deficit that exists currently between India and Pakistan has never fully recovered after the Kargil war. There have been confidence-building measures, some of which Pervez Musharraf himself was part of, but they've never fully recovered. After the September 11th attacks in the United States, Pervez Musharraf sort of, he thought he embodied a world leader. He thought he would have a new role in the world to play as someone who would help the Allied forces crack down, on the Taliban, on terrorism, etc. And you saw how that worked out for Pakistan. Pakistan's reputation in the world took an absolute downturn. They could never, ever, fully recovered about it. So therefore, this is something that Pakistan has not been able to. Not been able to completely fix. I think that Musharraf, that Musharraf factor as far as Pakistan is concerned, is something that Pakistan continues to actually grapple with at this time. This time, Owais is still with us. Owais, if I could come to you quickly, I think we're getting more guests joining us on our coverage at this point of time. Owais, is there, what are the initial reactions coming out of Pakistan? Will General Pervez Musharraf get a state funeral? Will there be state mourning in Pakistan? Will there be ceremonials? Can you throw some light on that, Owais?
Well, I would like to throw some light on that, but the adjectives that you've been using in your description of the former President Musharraf, and the way he orchestrated the Kargil war, and the way he was a villain for India and for Pakistan and for the world. I'm sorry that this is going a bit too far. Now, you see, as we discussed a little bit earlier, that when it comes to the relationship between Pakistan and India, we all know that it's complicated. And for us, Muhammad Ali Jinnah is the greatest hero. For you, he might be a villain. For us, Gandhi might. We won't talk about Gandhi in a way that it is.
Always, your
So,
country didn't even claim your
I'm
soldiers.
sorry,
Your country didn't claim your soldiers.
can you let me
No,
finish?
I'll let you speak. I'm just saying your country didn't even claim your soldiers. They had to be buried
When
on
it comes
Indian
to when
soil.
it comes to
This is a man who, after demitting office, had to leave and run away
have
from
your
your
own
country.
narrative, my
And you're
friend.
saying,
You have your own
he's not a
narrative.
villain.
You have your own narrative. Yes,
It's not a
I
narrative. It's not
respect
a
your
narrative.
opinion. I
You may
respect
have
your
something to
opinion,
you may
but
need to say some things. I understand that as a Pakistani
this is
journalist
not.
or waste, but the fact is he was a
Okay,
villain.
but what I'm saying is that he was clear when it comes to his actions and his
Of course.
ideology. Pervez
Of course.
Musharraf was clear that if you take one step for peace, we will take 10 steps for peace. If you want war, we are ready for war. And
He
this
didn't do
is
that.
how his this is what he spoke about, and this is what he said, and this is what he did the whole of his life. When it comes to India, we all remember that whenever he spoke about India, he was always talking about peace and war both. So it's not a one-sided affair when it comes to his narrative. But when it comes to the state funeral, the news is yet to come. The government is yet to decide as to what will be, and obviously it depends on his immediate family. As far as my personal opinion goes, obviously he is a Pakistani. He was a Pakistani. He was the president of the country, and he was a proud soldier, a gentleman soldier. And I don't think there will be any issues if his family wants to get him buried in Pakistan. We would welcome that, obviously. He was a Pakistani president, so there's no problem in that.
Okay. Always one final question. What kind of legacy does General Musharraf enjoy within the Pakistan, within the Pakistan army, if I could ask you that? Does he still have a stellar reputation? Has it become complicated? How has it become in the years, with reflection, with hindsight, etc.? Can you throw some light on that?
Well, when it comes to Pakistan Army and their relationship with Pervez Musharraf, Pakistan Army people have always revered him as one of their leaders, and he was always, whenever you talk to any army person, I speak to former army people a lot of times, and they speak well about him. So there's no question, there's no doubt about his reputation and his relationship with the Pakistan army. The fact that he was not in Pakistan, obviously it was due to political reasons, as Mr. Fawad Chaudhry mentioned, but he was not well. His treatment was going on in the UAE. He came back to Pakistan. He formed a political party also. The political party is still active. So it's not something that Pakistanis have completely forgotten about him, and the relationship between Pakistan and Musharraf is nowhere. So that's not the case. The army person and the people, they speak well about him.
Okay, always thank you very much for joining us on this coverage. Appreciate your time and your words on General Pervez Musharraf. We've at the India Today group, Pervez Musharraf had been hosted at the India Today conclave. We'll play out a segment of what he had said at that time in one of the most widely watched interactions with General Pervez Musharraf while he was the dictator of Pakistan in just a short few minutes from now. But Pervez Musharraf, and I will agree with Owaisi when he says that things were complicated between India and Pakistan. Both sides have their perspectives, and given how turbulent relations between India and Pakistan have been, I think each side is entitled to their own views, especially at a time when both countries nearly came to a full-fledged war after the Kargil operation. But for India, there's no editing the reality that Pervez Musharraf was a hate figure. He was someone who needlessly dragged India into a border skirmish that had no provocation whatsoever, because it came in the shadow of a peace overture by the then Indian Prime Minister. He was someone who was seen to, have a lot of control over what was happening in Pakistan at that time. And then perhaps that's the reason why India saw Musharraf as an opportunity for clarity as far as relations were concerned, not knowing that this was a man who would be, deviously planning something to bleed India. And that's what happened in Kargil. So like I said, there will not be very many people mourning Pervez Musharraf here in India. He is dead. That is sad, but the condolences go to his family. But for the larger damage that he did to India, families of servicemen in the Kargil war and beyond, is something that I don't think will ever be forgiven. Even in the years that followed, Pervez Musharraf not for a moment expressed any climb down from his hardline positions as far as India was concerned. He was well aware that Kargil was a misadventure, but I think he had invested so much into that operation that he needed to devote the rest of his life to justifying his role in it, justifying his planning of the Kargil operation, and to promoting the idea that it was some kind of a noble victory as far as Pakistan was concerned. So let's make no two bones about it. Condolences to the Musharraf family, but Pervez Musharraf was most definitely, a villain who bled India, someone who betrayed the Indian leadership at that time, and therefore was not someone to be trusted. Remember that in the years following 9/11, in the years after Musharraf demitted office, he devoted much of his time to to criticizing India, to pointing fingers at Indian operations, to constantly propagating the bogey of Indian intelligence agencies, perpetrating terror in Balochistan and elsewhere. Which one can argue is part of his role, was part of his role and what was expected of him. But he played that role to the hilt. He played that role with elan, even though it was from another country. He fled from Pakistan for various reasons, a complicated relationship with his own domestic turf. All of these came into play. So Pervez Musharraf is a layered figure, is a difficult figure. When he came to India, he did display something of a soft side during those interactions with Atal Bihari Vajpayee. Attempts, I remember, were made to try and gift Pervez Musharraf's old Haveli in Delhi back to him or to the Pakistani government or the Prime Minister's office at the time. It didn't really take off. It never really worked out in that way for various reasons. I'm guessing real estate reasons. But that was only that's just an indication of how willing the Indian government was to show that it wanted to make peace and wanted to make meaningful gestures that had an emotional connect and reflected the history of India and Pakistan before partition. But all of that came to no avail for various reasons, as we saw, because in the months that followed the Agra summit, the Lahore bus journey, the Kargil war, the Kargil skirmish did happen. So Musharraf is the person who is responsible for that. It was not India. There will be many people who will continue to say that it takes two hands to clap. India made the first move. All of those things will be said. But at the end of the day, it was Pervez Musharraf and Nawaz Sharif. Nawaz Sharif was, in some ways, a kind of, he was like a sort of helpless bystander watching the entire Kargil operation take place. Even though Musharraf, in his book, In the Line of Fire, goes a long way in also assigning a role to Nawaz Sharif, the then Prime Minister, for what happened in Kargil, saying that it was with his knowledge. He had been briefed about what was happening during the Kargil operations. He was constantly kept in the loop about what was taking place, which completely went in the face of the initial denials by the Pakistani establishment that they had anything to do with the Kargil operation. So the Pakistan has fought 3 large-scale operations with India, many forward deployments. one skirmish in Kargil. They've never won a single war. In 1965, it ended with a ceasefire. In 1971, it ended with 1971, a war in which Pervez Musharraf was actually a commando who fought at the front. That was a complete rout of Pakistan. No bigger military victory has ever been known, in the 20th century. And therefore, for Pervez Musharraf to still embody that, that machismo, Pakistani machismo, is a little rich. And I think, I'm sure Pakistani journalists like Owais, who was with us just now, will have a problem with him being looked at as a villain. But I think it's a little more complicated than just India's view of Pervez Musharraf. He was a man who was viewed with suspicion and distrust by people across the board. In the United States, he was seen with distrust. There were U.S. senators, U.S. congressmen who, pointed a finger at Musharraf and said, "This is not a man we should be trusting." There were many voices within the U.S. Congress that believed that Musharraf was not a man to be trusted to do business with in the years following 9/11, and therefore for India to have anything more than its current view on Pakistan, which in many ways also became a tone of "I told you so." In the years following 9/11, India has constantly been pointing at Pakistan and saying, "I told you so" to the West. So General Pervez Musharraf was born in 1943. He was 79 years old when he passed away today. He rose to be a 4-star general. He was the 10th president of Pakistan, after the 1999 military takeover following the Kargil War. He was the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff Committee from 1998 to 2001, and the 7th Chief of Army Staff from 1998 to 2007. So the 6 years following the September 11th attacks, all the way till 2007, Operation Enduring Freedom, Operation Enduring Freedom in Afghanistan, were all happening under Pervez Musharraf's watch. And in those years, Pervez Musharraf traveled the world. He traveled to the United States. He saw that as an opportunity to, build his own profile, to recast himself as a truly world leader, dehyphenated from India, a man with a role in the post 9/11 world, a man who would be seen as a staunch ally of the United States in taking on, the powers that be in Afghanistan that was descending into chaos. He saw himself as a statesman. He saw himself as a military genius who would help the allies, as it were, in Afghanistan. All of that obviously crashed and burned because the Afghan operations were a disaster. Pervez Musharraf, failed to help the United States in any meaningful manner. Ended up converting Afghanistan into a black hole for soldiers from the United States and other countries. Osama bin Laden was finally discovered hiding in Pakistan under Pakistani protection and was killed in a secret operation by the US Navy SEALs in 2011. All of these coming together happened because of the legacy of Pervez Musharraf. He was the man in charge of Pakistan's all-powerful military that looked over what was taking place in Afghanistan as well, the operations that led to the 9/11 terror attacks, the fact that many of the hijackers of the 9/11 planes had visited Pakistan, they had received protection from Pakistan and Afghanistan. There was a Pakistani angle at a time when Pervez Musharraf was the chief of the army staff. None of this can be looked away, and all of these are things that have been mentioned in the 9/11 report. Unfortunately, there was not perhaps enough to completely indict General Pervez Musharraf for his role or his acts of omission and commission that led to 9/11. But I think that has more to do with the fact that the United States saw in General Musharraf in the days after 9/11 a general whose help they saw as indispensable. They needed Musharraf at that time. They needed his okay for many of the things that the United States wanted to do in Afghanistan. And therefore, they couldn't seem to be, going after him with a charge sheet and, indicting him for his supposed role in omission and commission before 9/11. So those are geopolitical complexities that maybe saved General Pervez Musharraf's skin. But I think in his death today, I hope there will be historians, scholars, geopolitical experts who will dig a little deeper and look a little deeper into the manner in which General Pervez Musharraf created Pakistan and crafted into a perfect safe haven, for global terror. He took what was already a sort of petri dish for state-sponsored terror and gave it a kind of industrialized perfection. And that's one of the reasons why 9/11, in some ways, at one level, was possible. The fact that Osama bin Laden, after being hunted for years in Afghanistan, found safe haven in a military cantonment town in Pakistan for I don't know how many years, tells you everything you need to know about the Pervez Musharraf legacy. And therefore, I think as we go forward to pick up the pieces of this man's broken reputation, look at his legacy, look in the rearview mirror for all the damage that he's done, I think historians are going to have their hands full. They're going to have many years of papers to pick through, look into documents. Hopefully the United States will have a fresh perspective. Hopefully they may even declassify some papers. Every few years, documents and cables are declassified, like in the WikiLeaks files. I'm sure there must be pages and pages of classified documents that indict General Pervez Musharraf for his role, both in what happened on 9/11, but also later in making the world a far more dangerous place. Our editorial director of the India Today group, Raj Jengappa, a journalist one of the very few who has met and interviewed General Pervez Musharraf, is also live with us. Good afternoon, sir. Thank you for being with us. Your views first, very quickly on the death of Pervez Musharraf today. How do you remember him? You've interviewed him, you've met him, you've covered many of the, that entire phase when he was the both the military and military leader and president of Pakistan. Your views today, sir?
Well, Shiv, I think you've summed it up very well in what you said a little earlier. And, the interesting thing about President Musharraf or Pervez Musharraf or General Musharraf, however you'd like to call him, is that there is even towards the end, he had come to the India Today conclave. I've met him first when, just before Agra, he gave me an interview for India Today magazine, just before he came to meet Atal Bihari Vajpayee in this very daring move to try and see whether peace could be brought between the two countries, having been the man of war, as you said earlier. Just in 1999, betrayed his own prime minister, because that's what Mr. Nawaz Sharif, who's then prime minister, told me in an interview, that he did not know that General Musharraf was planning Kargil and had kept him in the dark. Of course, that's a debatable question on that matter. But from that, in this kind of commando fashion that he does, is to try and brazen his way into India. And he spoke to me at that time with a great deal of confidence. And I remember that when we began the interview, I said, he's from the artillery. So I said, my dad was also from the Indian Army in the artillery. And I said, I'm a son of a gunner. And he had a huge laugh. And we chatted more amicably after that, because there was a lot of hostility at the time that I had gone across to Pakistan to interview him. And subsequently as well, President Musharraf stayed in the news even as dictator of Pakistan for almost 7 years that was there. There was, he had two facets to him. One was this kind of tactical, he was a great tactical tactician, if you would like to call it, but very poor at strategic stuff. So, in the initial part of Kargil, and you read his book also that he brought out subsequently, he makes these very tall claims about what he did and how he was stopped by Nawaz Sharif from actually continuing with the war. But the truth was they had lost the war by then. Now, these things he doesn't accept at all, right through his entire years, even when it comes to the conclave, that he was on the back foot, that the things that he did in Kargil, the kind of stuff that he covered up in terms of what happened with Osama bin Laden and Afghanistan, all these issues were something that he would not admit. He would continue to maintain, and that's the facet of this personality. He, on one side, waged war with India, and in the next 7 years, spent a lot of time trying to build bridges with India and bring peace with India. In fact, I recall I've interviewed Satinder Lamba as well, Ambassador Lamba, who was the interlocutor for Dr. Manmohan Singh, and the two sides had reached, along with his counterpart, if I recall, Tariq Aziz, had reached a point just before Pervez Musharraf ran into trouble politically, internally, had reached a point where there was some sort of agreement being worked out between India and Pakistan on Kashmir that could have, brought some solution. Of course, everybody else said that the fact was that it was never made public, and if it had been made public, and the reaction on both sides may have completely stalled what they had planned. But that's the contradictions that we see, Shiv. On one side, this man waged huge amount of war, was responsible for a lot of suffering, a lot of unfortunate incidents that happened between the two countries. And on the other side, here was someone who was also trying to build peace with India. And if in terms of running the country itself, Pakistan, in the initial years when I met him, he was very, he wanted to develop Pakistan, and he saw an opportunity in trying to bring a lot of things together. He had a very forward-looking prime minister who was back from the US, I remember, and they were trying to shape the economy. But the fundamental issues that bogged Pakistan and continue to bog Pakistan even now is that the fact that the army control never loosened. And the moment you had someone like Pervez Musharraf, who was a general who had taken charge through a coup and remained dictator, that situation was not going to, end in any quick manner, as we saw, and continues to persist today.
Raj, in the years following Pervez Musharraf demitting office, in your view, why did he feel the need to leave Pakistan, and what kind of legacy do you think? I know in India it's things tend to be black and white as far as Pakistani leaders are concerned, especially someone as polarizing as Pervez Musharraf. But what kind of reputation and legacy does he leave in Pakistan?
He left power. I mean, to answer your question, I think he fell from power because he misread the entire situation that was happening. He was taking on the judiciary. He was taking on every particular force out there. And he had become highly popular towards the end of his, 6th or 7th year in power.
Yeah.
And at that time, the good thing about it, let's just put it this way, is that Nawaz Sharif comes back. Zardari is there, and they form a national government. And the fact that he did not try to attempt a second coup at that particular point, I think he was too weak in any case to do that. There was a lot of public protest, if I recall. And I went in 2008 to cover that elections with Nawaz Sharif and Zardari combining and forming a national government. So though he did not restrict the powers of the military, he continued to have all the levers of power which even exist today. The fact was that when the crunch time came, he did allow a transition to democracy of whatever kind that you have in Pakistan, and that would, in some senses, be a good legacy of his. There's a lot that went wrong with his whatever he did, and he does not admit it. Even to the end, when he came to the conclave and other places, he continued to maintain that what he did was right in his belief, that he had, that he had worked towards strengthening Pakistan, that India's the taking on India was part of that plan. But you see now what has happened in Pakistan is very unfortunate. The civilian powers that are there have never really lived up to the expectations of the voting. So I think you wouldn't just blame the army there. There has been a lot of, lack of sort of governance that is there. You've seen the way Imran Khan ran the country down, and now you're seeing the kind of trouble that Pakistan has. It's unfortunate. I think overall, India wants a stable Pakistan, a Pakistan that does not indulge in terrorist acts. It wants to see a prosperous Pakistan, because a prosperous Pakistan is in India's interest, just as any neighbor around us. Unfortunately, that situation has not been reached either during President Musharraf's time, subsequent to that during the Zardari rule, as well as Mr. Nawaz Sharif's rule and Imran Khan's rule. We have not seen that kind of development, unfortunately.
Mr. Chengappa, appreciate your time. Thank you very much for joining us. One of the few journalists who had actually interviewed Pervez Musharraf, met him, during the India Today conclave, covered his entire time as dictator of Pakistan and then president. You will hear more from India Today's journalists. He was at the conclave as well. We'll play out a chunk of that interaction that happened many years ago here on India Today. For the moment, we're taking a very quick break. We'll, of course, get you all the updates on Pervez Musharraf's death, the ceremonies that might take place in Pakistan in just a few minutes from now. Complete coverage here on India Today. Thanks for watching. Quick break. Back with much more.
You are watching India Today.
Congratulations on this good set of numbers that you've reported. Your own take, was it in line with your expectations or better than your expectations? And also, what were the key factors that really supported the bottom line?
As you know, we were the first ones in the life insurance space to do a M&A, and we had guided the street that we will be margin neutral about a year down the line, but very happy to share that we are already at margin neutrality, which means that the combined entities margins, new business margins.
You are watching India Today.
Hello, you're watching India Today and I am Aishwarya Paliwal. Let's start the show with the headlines. Kargil war villain Pervez Musharraf dies at the age of 79 after prolonged illness in Dubai. His mortal remains unlikely to be brought back to Pakistan. Amid state of war, Karnataka, Siddaramaia's big announcement declares 2023 will be his last election. Slams Bommai claims no promises have been fulfilled so far. Bommai hits back, says he cannot stoop to Siddaramaia's level. Assam Chief Minister's big crackdown on child marriage. Over 2,000 people arrested so far. OAC calls the crackdown biased, demands release of men. Anti-encroachment drive sparks fury in Jammu and Kashmir. Stones versus bulldozers on Jammu streets. JNK-LG defends the drive, assures no harm to common man. In a historic strategic move, United States shoots down a Chinese spy balloon. China threatens repercussions, call US action a serious violation. Now, there's a big announcement which is being made by Congress leader Siddaramaiah just ahead of elections that will take place in the state of Karnataka. The Congress leader has announced that this is going to be his last election. He also openly challenged Chief Minister Baswaraj Bommai to prove how many promises the BJP-led government has fulfilled in the state. In Bidar, during the Prajadhwani Yatra, the senior Congress leader said that if the Chief Minister had guts, then he should form a Sabha and then he should answer all the doubts in connection with the 600 poll promises that the Saffron Party had made during the 2018 elections. He also said that the Bharatiya Janata Party did not come to power owing to the blessings of the people of the state, but just because they won 104 seats in the election. Now, following this comment, Chief Minister Bommai said that these words do not suit Siddaramaiah. He was in a responsible office and that he cannot resort to using such language.
ನನಗೆ ಚುನಾವಣೆಗೆ ನಿಲ್ತಕ್ಕಂಥದ್ದು ಇದೇ ಕೊನೆ. ಆದರೆ ರಾಜಕೀಯದಿಂದ ನಿವೃತ್ತಿ ಆಗಲ್ಲ. ರಾಜಕೀಯವಾಗಿ ಎಲ್ಲ ರೀತಿಯ ಬೆಂಬಲ ಸಹಕಾರವನ್ನ ಈಗಲೂ ಕೊಡ್ತೇನೆ, ಮುಂದೆನೂ ಕೂಡ ಕೊಡ್ತೇನೆ ಅಂತಕ್ಕಂಥ ಮಾತುಗಳನ್ನು ಹೇಳಲಿಕ್ಕೆ ಬಯಸ್ತೇನೆ. ಅದೇ ಬಿಜೆಪಿ ಅವರು ಮಾಡಿದಾರ ಹೇಳಿ ನೋಡೋಣ. 2018ರಲ್ಲಿ 600 ಭರವಸೆಗಳನ್ನು ಕೊಟ್ಟಿದ್ರು. 600 ಭರವಸೆಗಳು. ಮಿಸ್ಟರ್ ಬಸವರಾಜ ಬೊಮ್ಮಾಯಿ ಮಾತೆತ್ತಿದ್ರೆ ತಾಕತ್ತಿದ್ರೆ ದಮ್ಮಿದ್ರೆ ಅಂತ ಹೇಳ್ತೀರಿ. ನಿಮಗೆ ತಾಕತ್ತಿದ್ರೆ ದಮ್ಮಿದ್ರೆ ನೀವೇ ಸಭೆ ಏರ್ಪಾಡು ಮಾಡಿ, ನಾನು ಆ ವೇದಿಕೆಗೆ ಬರ್ತೀನಿ. ಒಂದೇ ವೇದಿಕೆ ಮೇಲೆ ನಾವು ಕೊಟ್ಟಿರ್ತಕ್ಕಂಥ ಭರವಸೆಗಳು, ನೀವು ಕೊಟ್ಟಿರ್ತಕ್ಕಂಥ ಭರವಸೆಗಳು ಎಷ್ಟೆಷ್ಟು ಈಡೇರಿಸಿದೀವಿ ಅನ್ನೋದನ್ನ ಜನ ತೀರ್ಮಾನ ಮಾಡಲಿ. ತಾಕತ್ತಿದ್ರೆ ಏರ್ಪಾಡು ಮಾಡುವಂತ ಹೇಳಬೇಕು.
ಅವ್ರು ಏನು ಪ್ರವಾಸ ಮಾಡ್ತಾ ಇದ್ದಾರೆ ಆ ಭಾಗದ ಶಾಸಕರನ್ನು ಗಟ್ಟಿ ಇಟ್ಕೊಳ್ಳೋಕೆ ಹೇಳಿ, ಅವ್ರು ಕಾಂಗ್ರೆಸ್ ಪಕ್ಷದ ಶಾಸಕರನ್ನು ಗಟ್ಟಿ ಇಟ್ಕೊಳ್ಳೋಕೆ ಹೇಳಿ. ಇಷ್ಟೇ ಹೇಳ್ಬೋದು. ನಾನೊಬ್ಬ ಜವಾಬ್ದಾರಿ ಸ್ಥಾನದಲ್ಲಿದ್ದೇನೆ. ಅವ್ರಂಗೆ ಏನೇನೋ ಮಾತಾಡೋದಿಲ್ಲ. ಅವರು ತಮ್ಮ ಕಾಂಗ್ರೆಸ್ಸಿನ ಶಾಸಕರನ್ನು ಗಟ್ಟಿ ಇಟ್ಕೊಳ್ಳೋ ಪ್ರಯತ್ನವನ್ನು ಮಾಡಿ ಅಷ್ಟೇ ನಾನು ಸಲಹೆ ಕೊಡೋದು ಇಷ್ಟಪಡ್ತೀನಿ.
Now, my colleague Anaga Kesav is now joining me on the story. Anaga, it looks like just before the elections, we will see a lot of finger pointing. The Congress is now pointing fingers at the ruling Bharatiya Janata Party. Bharatiya Janata Party is turning around and saying that they have done enough for the state. The BJP at the moment is also saying that they are very confident that they will be winning the upcoming elections.
Absolutely. So Siddaramaiah first, he openly challenged the incumbent Chief Minister Basavaraj Bommai for an open debate, saying that he can prove that BJP has not fulfilled their promises, whereas Congress in their stint had fulfilled all the given poll promises. But BJP, out of the 600 poll promises, has not even fulfilled 50 to 60 poll promises, and I can prove it, is what Siddaramaiah says. In addition, he also went on to get emotional, pulling the emotional cord by saying that this might be his last election, and even after he retires, he will continue being in politics and will support all his all his colleagues in the political party. However, this is going to be his last election. And he also went on to boast, a sort of chest thumping by saying that he's the only chief minister after Devaraj Arasu who has served 5 full terms. Even doyens like Yediyurappa has not served 5 full terms. Whereas Siddaramaiah is saying that I'm the only chief minister who had served for 5 full years. And this is the war of words that we're seeing right now.
Anaga, thank you for joining me with all those details on this story. Now, over the next 1 week, thousands of men in Assam who married underage girls will be arrested. Now, this announcement was made by the Chief Minister of Assam, Himanta Biswa Sarma, during his visit to Nagaon district. Now, his statement comes against the backdrop of a crackdown which has been initiated by his government against child marriage. Watch this report.
Over 2,000 arrests within 2 days and 4,000 cases registered. The Assam administration launched a massive clampdown on child marriages across the state, going all out against those who force minor girls into a life of slavery. The statewide crackdown announced by the Chief Minister Himanta Biswa Sarma began on Friday and will continue for the next 6 days. The police are also ready with a list of over 8,000 people who are facing problems. The crackdown by Assam government came days after the state cabinet's decision to book those who have married girls below 14 years of age and under the Anti-Child Rape POCSO Act. Those who have married girls in the 14 to 18 years age group are being booked under the Prohibition of Child Marriage Act.
যে আমি বৰ্তমান 4,074টা কেছ ৰেজিষ্টাৰ কৰিছিলোঁ আৰু ইয়াত সৰ্বমুঠ 8,134 জন ব্যক্তিক আমি অভিযুক্তৰ শাৰীত ৰাখিছোঁ।
Some of the victims of the child marriage and kin of the accused, however, resent the crackdown, saying the arrests are making their future uncertain. Meanwhile, the AIMIM trained guns at the ruling BJP. AIMIM chief Asaduddin Owaisi said the crackdown on child marriage is aimed at harassing Muslims.
6 साल से आपकी सरकार है, फेलियर ऑफ द स्टेट है ये, ऊपर से आप और एक उन पे मुश्किलात के पहाड़ उन पे आप डाल दे रहे पूरा। ये आसाम में बीजेपी की सरकार जो है एक बायस सरकार है मुस्लिम्स के लिए।
और संविधान की खिलाफ वर्जी और कानून की खिलाफ वर्जी करना एक जुर्म है, होना चाहिए कार्रवाई, लेकिन उन कार्रवाइयों को एक धर्म विशेष के साथ जोड़ना और ये कहने की कोशिश करना कि सिर्फ ये चाइल्ड मैरिज एक्ट का उल्लंघन जो है सिर्फ मुसलमानों में होता है, ये कहीं ना कहीं आपकी दोहरी मानसिकता को दोहराता है।
देखिए, जो उम्र बच्ची के पढ़ने की है, लड़की के पढ़ने की है, हम उसका पढ़ाई छुड़ाकर और उसे शादी कराते हैं और कानून के खिलाफ जाए तो ये कानूनी जुर्म तो है। और अगर कोई सरकार ऐसा कर रही है, वो बच्चों को पढ़ाना चाहती है और बाल विवाह के खिलाफ है, तो हम उसका समर्थन करते हैं।
Moreover, claiming that the arrest violates several laws, the All India United Democratic Front said that it is exploring legal routes to protect the rights of citizens.
Actually, we are discussing with some senior lawyers. If they suggest us, then we will move to the court.
You'll go to the court?
Yeah, sure. Because it is a violation of the several act. It is violation of the CRPC. It is violation of the Limitation Act. It is the 468 is violation.
A genuine bid to weed out the horror of child marriage or an attempt to target Muslims. Political opinion is divided on the biggest crackdown on sexual exploitation of the girl child. Bureau Report, India Today.
News that's just coming. The government has cracked down on Chinese applications. The IT Ministry has blocked 138 betting and gambling applications. 94 loan lending apps have also been banned on urgent basis. The government is cracking down on Chinese apps. All these apps, according to government sources, were taking Indians' data, and also these apps were not secure, which is why the IT Ministry has now gone ahead and blocked betting and gambling applications. My colleague Jitendra Bahadur is now joining me on the phone line. Jitendra, चाइनीज ऐप्स को लेके पहले भी सरकार का जो रवैया रहा है वो बहुत सख्त रहा है, और अब आईटी मिनिस्ट्री ने ऐसे कई सारे ऐप्स हैं जो बेटिंग करते थे, जो गैम्बलिंग को जिसके अंदर लोग गैम्बल करते थे, उन सभी के लिए अब एक बैन का ऑर्डर जारी कर दिया है।
बिल्कुल, ये केंद्र सरकार का एक तरीके से डिजिटल स्ट्राइक कह सकते हैं, क्योंकि जिस तरीके से बेटिंग ऐप के जरिए इस पर काम किया जा रहा था, इसके अलावा जो लोन लेंडिंग ऐप्स हैं उनके जरिए भी गलत तरीके की इंफॉर्मेशन दे करके लोगों को उसमें रिझाने की कोशिश की जा रही थी। तो इन तमाम ऐप्स पर कार्रवाई की जा रही है। जानकारी ये है कि 138 ऐसे ऐप हैं जो कि बेटिंग ऐप्स हैं, इसके अलावा 94 ऐप्स हैं, लोन लेंडिंग ऐप्स हैं, इनके खिलाफ कार्रवाई की जा रही है। मिनिस्ट्री ऑफ आईटी को केंद्रीय गृह मंत्रालय की तरफ से ये जानकारी दी गई थी और ये कहा गया था कि इस पर कार्रवाई होनी चाहिए। अब इसकी कार्रवाई का प्रोसेस शुरू हो चुका है, क्योंकि कई एजेंसीज की तरफ से इस पर कदम बढ़ाने के लिए कहा गया था। यही वजह है कि बेटिंग ऐप्स और इसके अलावा जो लोन लेंडिंग ऐप्स हैं इन पर कार्रवाई करने का प्राविधान शुरू कर दिया गया है, और करीब 232 टोटल ऐप्स हैं जिनकी किसी न किसी रूप में चाइनीज लिंक थे, इन पर कार्रवाई शुरू कर दी गई।
Thank you, Jitendra. ये सब जानकारी हमें देने के लिए my colleague Jitendra giving us all the details on the big crackdown that the government has done on Chinese apps. It is time now for us to take a very quick break. On the other side, Kargil war villain Pervez Musharraf dies at the age of 79 after prolonged illness in Dubai.
Are watching India Today.
I propose to increase the rebate limit to 7 lakhs.
Yet again, the nation trusts India Today TV. Highest concurrent users during the Budget 2023 speech. Most watched news channel on YouTube live. India Today #1.
War of words ahead of erode by polls intensifies. The BJP wades into ongoing tiff in the AIADMK front, suggesting the two factions led by E. Palaniswamy and O. Pannirselvam to bury the hatchet and work together.
I conveyed some things on behalf of our national president, Thiru J.P. Naddaji. I will not disclose what we spoke individually to you now. We have argued both of them to work together in the interest of Tamil Nadu and defeat DMK allies in this by-election.
The BJP statement hasn't gone down well with the AIADMK.
I do not like the fact that someone else is suggesting how we should run our party, because we have our leader and he knows what to do it. And I also believe it is good for any party member to just stick to their own party affairs and not good to interfere in other party affairs.
Every party has Lakshman Rekha. It is better the other party doesn't breach that. If we can have 1,000 advisors for BJP, we can tell BJP unity is good for the welfare of the state. Our job is to step down. Let Uddhav and Eknath Shinde join together and run the state in a prosperous way. Will they take the state?
The AIADMK leadership also warned the BJP against any bid to split their party.
என்பது உங்களுக்கும் தெரியும், மக்களுக்கும் தெரியும், எங்களுக்கும் தெரியும். நாங்கள் எச்சரிக்கையாக இருக்கிறோம்.
தேசிய ஜனநாயக கூட்டணி இப்ப இருக்குதா உடைஞ்சிருச்சா? தேசிய முற்போக்கு கூட்டணிங்கறத பயன்படுத்தி இருக்காங்க.
உள்ளாட்சி தேர்தலிலேயே பிஜேபி தனியா தான நின்னது. இந்த கேள்விக்கே பொருள் இல்லை.
கூட்டணி தொடர்ச்சி அதிமுக ஆபத்து நீங்க நினைக்கிறீங்களா?
என்னங்க?
Reacting to AIADMK's scathing attack, the BJP said they are not interfering in the AIADMK's internal tiff.
And BJP doesn't take any stand into other parties' internal functioning. And I have been consistently making it clear as the state president, party president here, that we don't advise nor do we interfere between two leaders to tell them how they should run their party. It is their business.
Armed with facts, she takes the news by its horns.
Do you think the future of these students are not hampered?
Fierce, bold and direct, setting the tone for the biggest stories from every corner and every angle. Expect nothing but the unfiltered truth.
News first, niceties later. Watch me, Nabila Jamal, on India Today.
You are watching India Today.
Now, the former president of Pakistan, Pervez Musharraf, passed away at the age of 79 in Dubai. The former military ruler passed away after a prolonged illness. He was undergoing treatment at the American hospital in Dubai. He was diagnosed with a life-threatening disease in 2018 in the UAE. Now, General Musharraf had left Dubai in March 2016 for medical treatment, and he then did not return to Pakistan. He was declared a fugitive in the assassination case of former Prime Minister Benazir Bhutto and the Red Mosque killing case. Musharraf, who had ruled Pakistan from 1999 to 2008, was charged with high treason and given a death sentence in 2019 for suspending the constitution. Musharraf escalated the violence in Kashmir. India lost more soldiers in in the years after the conflict. After the terrorist attack on the Parliament House in 2001, then Prime Minister of India, Atal Bihari Vajpayee, threatened military retaliation.
The situation in the country is perfectly calm, stable and under control. Dear brothers and sisters, your armed forces have never and shall never let you down.
President Musharraf was a dynamic personality and a man of stature. I'm sure he will be remembered as a man of stature both inside Pakistan and also internationally. And also, by the way, he's remembered inside Pakistan as someone who tried to actually make peace with India. And I fully understand that there will be many different analyses and references to Kargil and many other things. But the fact of the matter is, and I was just listening to the gentleman speaking just before me, and I respect his opinion, but the fact of the matter is, as someone who's in Islamabad, and as someone who meets and moves around in the think tank circles of Pakistan with retired foreign service and military officers, General Pervez Musharraf is often referred to as someone actually who tried to change Pakistani policy and tried to bring the people of Pakistan and India closer.
Abhishek Sen-Gupta, senior journalist, is now joining me on the story. Mr. Sen-Gupta, we are seeing that there were a lot of facets to General Musharraf. One, from which how India used to look at him, someone who India still considers is someone who stabbed Atal Bihari Vajpayee in the back, and also from a Pakistani point of view, from corruption to being very close to a lot of seniors. In Pakistan also, not a lot of people have that kind of faith and that kind of love in him. Do you believe that those things will also play out in coming days? Do you believe his mortal remains will actually be brought back to Pakistan?
Yeah, General Pervez Musharraf was a much loved, at the same time hated figure. He had a house that was divided. He had his fans and he also had his detractors. It's the same in Dubai, which he called home which he had been calling home since 2016, which is where he had been living after moving out of Pakistan. And yes, last few years he was frail. He was visibly getting weaker. Obviously, removing himself from the public eye, led a very, very private life towards the end. And as far as news from Dubai is concerned, we're getting a bit of contradictory stories because one section of his close aides and family members believe, in fact, indicating that his body might be taken to Pakistan for the last rites, and apparently they're waiting for his son Bilal, whereas the other camp says that all of that might just happen here, the cremation, the last rites. But again, none of that can be verified at this stage in time because, as you know, news just broke an hour ago, just about an hour and a half ago. So we're still trying to get those details as we speak.
Thank you, Mr. Sen-Gupta, for joining me on India Today on this story. Now, General Musharraf, in an exclusive conversation with India Today's Koel Puri, had infamously defended Pakistan over the 26/11 Mumbai attacks. He denied any role of Pakistan in the ISI in backing terrorist Ajmal Kasab. Listen in.
What does it make you feel like when you're regarded as the enemy?
Well, I believe in combating. So therefore,
If somebody believes me to be the enemy and wants to talk to me with hostility, I return hostility. I believe in that.
You say that in your memoirs you have been granted 9 lives of a cat, but I believe that you have at least used up 100 of those. I mean, the assassination attempts that we all know of, then also falling off mango trees, not being fortunately on Zia-ul-Haq's plane, and all sorts of other incidents that have happened where you've nearly escaped death. How has that altered your perception of life?
It has made me believe in destiny. It has made me believe that to be more brave. I mean, if something has to happen, well, it will happen and I can't prevent it. So while one takes care, you shouldn't be overly concerned, overly bothered.
Do you think you didn't do enough in your 10 years in power? Because today in the international press, Pakistan is being called a failed state, the most dangerous country in the world. Do you think you could have done some more?
Well, in 99 also, when I took over, it was being called a failed state and a defaulted state. And one expects Pakistan is a country which has a lot of resilience. Then India, when you are talking of India, now we are neighbors living in a certain region.
So surely India's safety should be in your interest also.
Yes, indeed.
Obviously.
Yes, why not?
So that you shouldn't consider that coercion.
Coercion is when you try to impose your will on the other. And we will not take imposition of your will on us.
What do you think the present Pakistani administration should do differently vis-a-vis Kasab? That to prove to India that they are on the same side as us on this great war on terror.
What should Pakistan do?
Yes.
But he is here. What should Pakistan do?
But he is, I know you will deny this, but he is a Pakistani national.
Well, if he's frankly, I am not privy to all the details of the investigation. If he is a Pakistani national, so you are trying him, isn't he? He is in your custody, so try him. Now, if the evidence shows that he is the main man, and he happens to be, whether he's from Pakistan or India, doesn't matter, he has done a terrorist act, he should be tried, and whatever the court decides is the final ruling.
Who do you think was behind the attacks of 26/11?
Of Bombay?
Yes.
I can't say. I don't know.
But of course you speculate. I mean, all of us have certain opinions of what...
I would just be conjecturing, and I don't believe in doing that. I don't want to take anybody's name and cast aspersions on anyone. But certainly I would like to say that if there is a thought that Pakistan government or ISI or the army in any way was involved, that is absolutely wrong.
Since you say that you have alluded to this fact that we are the same people with the same culture, the same history, why do you think we still have so many differences that are insurmountable?
Well, we have certain differences because of which we separated in 1947. The problem does not arise that Pakistan has not accepted India. I think there is a problem in some parts of your society who have not accepted Pakistan. But unfortunately, if there are disputes, festering disputes, which we have to resolve, if there is non-acceptance of realities of our existence, if there is attempts at dominating us, so these are, then we won't be able to achieve peace.
And on that note, it's a wrap on this bulletin. For further news and updates, you can log on to indiatoday.in. You can also download the app. This is me, Aishwarya Paliwal, signing off.
You are watching India Today.
Make your media plan smarter with India Today Live TV on your connected devices. Amplify your brand with 100 million smart internet viewers. To advertise, mail us at sales@aajtak.com.
Hello and welcome to our special episode, The Lifestyle Edit, Sustainable Living. I'm Jackie Narula with my producer Vaishnavi Kamarbar, and this time around we're bringing you everything you need to know about how to live more sustainably to contribute to a better planet that we will leave behind for our kids. So when it comes to fashion, tourism, home decor, all of this can be sustainable. We're going to tell you exactly how you can be more sustainable to save the planet of the climate crisis and the landfills that are filling up. There are some very interesting schools of thought when it comes to sustainability. There are some designers who actually feel that buying more is more sustainable because that creates employment. But the caveat being, if you buy from India, because we're a developing economy, there are other designers who feel that the fabrics, where you source everything from, the supply chain, all of that leads to sustainability as well. So when you go out tomorrow to buy, how do you know whether what you're buying is sustainable or not? Take a look at the lay of the land first.
The fast fashion industry is one of the biggest and most significant contributors to pollution globally. The extremely detrimental impact of fast fashion waste on the environment has been known for a while. According to reported.The, the fast fashion industry contributes to nearly 10% of global carbon emissions. Millions of clothes end up in landfills every day. While none of this is news, the debate on sustainability is an interesting one. Some of the senior members of this industry are extremely aware and sustainable and making an effort towards it.
If you are taking care of the people who are making the garments, who are weaving it, and then back end they are using the natural fiber to create the fabric, so they are not using plastics or polyesters, but they are using the green cotton and using that to create the fabric. Then I'm using those fabric, handloom fabric, to make fashionable garments. So ultimately it is sustaining the whole chain of the cycle. Even after usage, if it goes back to the earth, it disintegrates and turns into manure. So all these things are very much there, which I'm very much supporting and doing from the beginning of my career. And I think that is what my bit can be.
Pranav Kirti, who owns a fashion label with a strong social commentary, has a rather interesting view. His philosophy is buy more as it contributes to employment in India.
Our dialogue and our narration of the entire story, that you buy less. I'm not going to do anything about it. I'm just going to preach and you buy less. I think I have a little bit of a conflict over there. I feel as creative intellectuals and as industry stakeholders, it is our responsibility to make better. So buy as much as you want, but then it's our houses which have to produce better. By just buying less, nothing is going to be so remarkably impactful in the West. But over here, people are going to lose their jobs, and it's literally going to come down to their livelihoods. So we as entrepreneurs and as leaders have to provide better avenues for their income and as well as for our customers so that they have better options in the market.
So is our Indian concept of sustainability borrowed? Yes and no.
Like in the previous years, like maybe 100, 200 years before, our country was so much more sustainable in terms of, you know, the way we used to have our cooking and food, our textiles, everything was having a certain meaning. How it should be going this much only and then it will return back to the earth. So because of the fast life and so much of, in the name of progression, we have kind of actually gone backwards.
Anju Modi, who is gearing up for another store launch, and Pranav, who just recently concluded a showcase in Mumbai, feel buying more Indian and slow fashion is far more sustainable as a practice.
We have to give better choices to our customers. And when I said that buy more Indian, since generations India has been, sustainability has been a part of Indian culture. If you see, whether it's our mothers transferring their saris and shawls to their kids and daughters, and so on and so forth. The entire, how our houses are run. Use and throw is not our, has never been a way of living in India. So it's a very borrowed idea of sustainability. It's a very pressing issue at the moment, and we have to be very serious about this.
While it may be fashionable to be sustainable, the next time you go shopping, check if it's made in India. And also make sure slow fashion is your go-to option. In New Delhi, with inputs from Riya Modi and Vaishnavi Kaharwar, Chaiti Narula for India Today. You must have already understood by now that slow fashion is better for the planet. But it is also very expensive. And hence most people prefer to buy fast fashion. But fast fashion is a big contributor to pollution around the world, with all these landfills filling up, and we've already shown you enough reasons why fast fashion can be extremely detrimental to our environment. That's not the planet we probably want to leave for our kids behind. You can reuse, you can repurpose your slow fashion, or there is a big new trend which has come into India, that of a pre-loved revolution. Something called as closet detox. We'll tell you how the pre-loved revolution works, and there is no shame in going ahead and buying pre-loved pieces which are a product of slow fashion. Celebrities in India are now leading the way and are showing us how pre-loved fashion works. Some of them are Deepika Padukone, Alia Bhatt, Anushka Sharma, Katrina Kaif. They've all started the pre-loved revolution in India. Take a look. Many who understand sustainability understand slow fashion is the way to go. So what's the problem? Slow fashion can be more expensive, and more often than not is expensive compared to fast fashion. But there is a solution. Reuse, repurpose. Alternatively, go for something called as a closet detox. You can sell a big label on a pre-loved fashion platform to make the planet a better one, so that all of that does not go into the landfill. What's more, you can even buy pre-loved clothing. Celebrities have now caught on to the pre-loved trend. Recently, Alia Bhatt, Deepika Padukone, Katrina Kaif and Anushka Sharma indulge in a closet detox, setting off a pre-loved revolution in India. While you give your closet a second life, remember you are also giving your planet another life. And with that, don't forget to reuse, repurpose, or alternatively, join the pre-loved revolution in India. In New Delhi, with Vaishnavi Kaharwar, Chaiti Narula for India Today. Recently, one of the designers from India was a part of many designers who showcase off calendar in Paris. One of them, of course, was Vaishali Shidangule. And what really made headlines as far as we are concerned is how sustainable her fabrics are, how sustainable her weaves are, her entire supply chain that she takes care of, and the fact that her work ends up giving a lot of employment to rural India as well. What was more interesting than that
was the way she accessorized her models as well. The models were wearing all sustainable fabrics, sustainable designs, beautiful silhouettes which are signature Vaishali, and the bags were not real bags. They were those Indian tin cans that they were carrying with really earthy bras, accessories as well. It was a very rather interesting take as an ensemble when it comes to sustainability. Just to give you a perspective, we've got these visuals and we've got this story to show you how you can even use buttons lying at home and make accessories out of them. Here's a look. The only woman designer to have ever showcased at Paris Couture Week. She did that last year. This year, she did it off calendar amidst many other designers. Abyss. Her collection was deeply inspired by what lies under the vastness of the ocean. As a diver, she loves exploring the colors in the beautiful world that lies under the ocean. And while her showcased collection may outwardly have reflected that, at a quote-unquote deeper level, it was all about rediscovery of the inner self. Art meets couture has always been at the core of Vaishali's creations, and the flow of the outfit is very similar to the way the water exists. Hand weaves by Indian artisans, coding techniques, choice of sustainable fabrics, and Indian heritage are the core of what she creates. The world has taken notice of how sustainable her creations are. She herself wore one of her outfits in a typical Indian hue with her sculptural technique. It was a dress for the Western world, and for Indians, it was a twist to our heritage saris with the drape coming over her shoulder. Teamed with vintage Indian jewelry and tin cans, very interestingly used in villages, made fashionable as bags, a showcase of Indian art and craft got pulled off by Vaishali in her work. Interestingly, Vaishali Shadangule has never showcased at FDCI India Couture Week, and she does hope to do that very, very soon. I want viewers around the world to know this, and consumers rather around the world to know this, that when you're picking up a piece from a designer, whether it is you, whether it is, you know, some of the other stalwarts coming in from India who are also doing some fabulous work, and it's stunning, right? They need to understand the story that goes behind each and every one of these pieces, because how many brands today can stand up and say, number one, we're completely sustainable?
Designers, they have really big role to play to, I think, educate, and whatever they are selling, the story behind that piece, you know, it should be there very transparently.
While all her work is sustainable, she takes that beyond fashion into social impact, storytelling, and art. In fact, her flagship store in Mumbai stands testimony to sustainable decor. In Mumbai, Chaiti Narula for India Today. The pandemic is over, travel is opened up, but one new trend that has come up now as far as Indians are concerned is that sustainability as a trend is picking up, and traveling over tourism is picking up. If you're confused about what I'm talking about, we'll explain that to you in our next report. Sustainable tourism is gaining ground all over the world. So when you want to decompress and take a weekend off, say in Maldives and Sri Lanka and Dubai, in places which are closer to India or even within India itself, there are many options that have come up which give you the option of being sustainable while you're traveling. But what does sustainable tourism really mean? And what is the difference between a regular tourist and a sustainable traveler? Take a look. Decompression is important. De-stressing is essential, and we can't just stress this enough. The best way is shorter trips, domestic and international both. And the options are many and rather very exciting.
Maldives is constrained for 4 nights in a hotel, but Sri Lanka's experiences, whether you have the commercials to spend or whether you don't have commercials to spend. Sri Lanka offers you Hill Say Sri Lanka, and it also offers you beach, adventure, good food, and a connect for Indian. And I think anywhere where Indians go, they want to be connected by heart because we are raised on emotional values than anything else. So Sri Lankans understand that, and we perform that really well.
Add to that the trend of sustainability in tourism and how the consumer today is very discerning about responsible travel.
Sri Lanka is actually automatically sustainable. I mean, it's fairly low energy. The higher end resorts are, they understand that this is what the discerning tourist is looking for, and increasingly sustainability is coming and is there. I mean, the country is naturally sort of low carbon. We can save certain amounts by the way that we fly, and we're all doing that. Mangroves, I think, absorb maybe 12 times the carbon that a normal forest does. Seagrass is more like 36 times. So, blue carbon is a really important subject, and where we are, we're an island, tropical islands. It's an obvious kind of thing to do. So those are the things that we're working on.
One big trend amidst the discerning traveler is the fact that the Indian traveler is more a traveler rather than just a tourist.
Indians predominantly are becoming travelers to tourists. We were tourists all this while, but we are changing to become travelers. And tourists is which they go by recommendations of travel agents. But travelers are the ones who know what they want, but they still want assistance from a travel company to make their trip flawless. And they don't worry about a lot of money and bucks over there, because true depth of a vacation is also felt when you do things differently and not with the itinerary.
Sustainable tourism helps create jobs, and the location benefits by your travel by means of how you understand and contribute to the preservation efforts of the location's cultural history, wildlife preservation initiatives, reduction of carbon emissions, restoration of landscape and water bodies, and so much more. The discerning traveler today understands this, and the trend is palpable. For India's neighbouring country and island that has just come out of a tough couple of months, Sri Lanka, the doors are again wide open.
There is no better time than now to travel to Sri Lanka, because the reality is that you've got everything that was there before. Half the properties are half full, so they're really, really welcoming. It takes time to build reputations back again. So our focus at the moment is not so much about going out and promoting all the wonderful things that you can see in Sri Lanka, the beaches, the rainforests, the wildlife reserves, the history, the cuisine, the hospitality. Because the challenge, there are people that know that. The challenge is making people understand that the country is open.
I think you must travel to Sri Lanka. Sri Lanka is a friendly neighbor, and Sri Lanka has from north to south to offer that any big country would offer. We underestimate Sri Lanka because once your first love is Sri Lanka, it will always be your forever love.
While there is no better joy for a traveler than traveling globally, traveling responsibly and ensuring sustainability is now picking up more than ever before. In New Delhi, Chaiti Narula for India Today. Sustainability is not just restricted to the clothes you buy, to the countries you visit. It also means the entire lifestyle turns sustainable. Now, a big part of sustainable living and lifestyle happens to be sustainable home decor. What does that really mean? It means that you use furniture picked up from, say, a market which has pre-loved furniture. You convert it, give it a nice distressed, chic, vintage look, or you have buckets lying around, bottles lying around, you want to throw them and put them in the landfill? I don't think so. You can use all of those, decorate them, upcycle and reuse all of them, and make your home really beautiful with your waste. I'm not even kidding you. Vaishnavi Gaharwar will show you ways in which you can reuse, recycle and upcycle for great home decor in a sustainable way. Take a look.
Hello, I'm Vaishnavi and I am going to tell you ways to spruce up your home in a sustainable way. It's possible. It's way more affordable and it's great for the environment. So let's show you how you can make your home more sustainable. Reuse. You can always buy furniture from a thrift market. Get a carpenter to make it look distressed chic. It will help your home to look super international and add an old vintage character to your home. Also, it will help you save the trees from being cut. Go green. If you have a big house, plant some trees around it and do your bit. If you have a small home, nice and cozy one, you can always plant saplings around it. Have a mini garden. As a hobby, you can also try hydroponics. We have the CEO of the hotel to tell you more about it.
Hydroponics is a technology which is without the soil, which means you don't use any soil out there, which also means that whatever you're producing out of that, like the green leafy vegetables, you can actually produce fruits also from there. So this is without the soil, which means that also means there won't be any chemical, no fertilizer, no pesticizer. This is one of the cleanest technology of growing your own vegetables. The beauty of this technology is also that you do not wait for sunlight to come to produce your own vegetables. So the technology what we have right now in the hotel, we are actually growing it in the basement, our basements, in one of the rooms. And this only needs your AC to be maintained at a particular temperature. It's a basic monitoring which is required, and our chefs are super excited now, along with the gardeners, to take this technology to the next level.
So what they have actually started doing here is, they have started using only glass bottles. There are no plastic bottles. In this way, they're trying to save the environment by recycling the glass bottles. What they do first is, they clean the water bottles. They have been used before. The glass water bottles are then filled again with water of 7.42 pH level. And then these bottles are sealed. Upcycle. That does not mean cycling uphill. It simply means reusing the old stuff and making something new and creative out of it. Just like the sapling in this coconut shell. Do you have wine corks just lying around? Don't throw them. Instead, stick some cool shells and stones on it. Make bottle stopper out of it. You can even use an old cabinet lying around. Paint it. Convert it into a cool book library. You can also convert it into a magazine holder. It will give it a vintage chic look. So finally, if the shopaholic in you wants to buy something new, research. There are tons of others, billions of options in the market who are offering furniture which is sustainable and home decor options. Go for them.
It's not easy to adapt to the sustainable living. It is not easy to look away from fast fashion. It is not easy to stop yourself from buying furniture that you really love. But it is a way of life, and slowly and steadily we can all incorporate fashion, tourism, home decor, and so many other things into our life which are far more sustainable. Every drop in the ocean really counts. And here is Vaishnavi Gaharwar, the producer of the show, and me, Sheti Narula, hoping that this show helps you into a better sustainable life. Thank you so much for tuning in. We'll continue bringing you all these special shows week on week. Thanks so much.
Make your media plan smarter with India Today Live TV on your connected devices. Amplify your brand with 100 million smart internet viewers. To advertise, mail us at sales@aajtak.com. Make your media plan smarter with India Today Live TV on your connected devices. Amplify your brand with 100 million smart internet viewers. To advertise, mail us at sales@aajtak.com.
You are watching India Today.
Allahu Akbar. चलो उस्ताद आगे चलो 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 आगे चलो उस्ताद. Allahu Akbar. चलो उस्ताद आगे चलो 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 आगे चलो उस्ताद.
A huge blast has been reported at a checkpoint in Quetta in Balochistan province of Pakistan, injuring at least 5 people. The blast occurred in a high security area of Quetta near the police headquarters and at the entrance of the Quetta cantonment area. The fresh blast comes just days after at least 100 people, mostly policemen, were killed in a suicide blast that took place inside a mosque at a police headquarters in northwest Pakistan on the 30th of January. Attacks by the Tehreek-e-Taliban Pakistan are on the rise across the country.
चलो उस्ताद आगे चलो 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 आगे चलो उस्ताद.
Hello, you're watching India Today and I'm Aishwarya Paliwal. Let's start the show with the headlines. Kargil war villain Pervez Musharraf dies at the age of 79 after prolonged illness in Dubai. His mortal remains are unlikely to be brought back to Pakistan. Amid the state of war in Karnataka, Siddaramaia's big announcement, he declares 2023 will be his last election. He slams Bommai, claims no promises have been fulfilled by the BJP so far. Assam Chief Minister's big crackdown on child marriages. Over 2,000 people arrested so far. Owaisi calls the crackdown biased. He demands the release of men. Anti-encroachment drive sparks fury in Jammu and Kashmir. It's stones versus bulldozers on Jammu streets. JNK-LG defends the drive, assures no harm will happen to the common man. In a historic strategic move, US has shot down a Chinese spy balloon. China has threatened repercussions. They call US action a serious violation. Or after former Pakistan dictator dies, Congress's leader Shashi Tharoor has called Musharraf a force of peace. Kargil villain and butcher of many Indians have been lauded by Congress. The BJP has slammed the Congress for allegedly having a soft corner for former Pakistan dictator Pervez Musharraf. BJP has claimed that Congress has been hailing Taliban and Congress is someone who has backed Osama bin Laden. Bharatiya Janata Party has tweeted all videos of Musharraf while hailing gentleman Rahul and slamming the Modi government. There's a big political war that is taking place between the Congress and the Bharatiya Janata Party over the death of the former president of Pakistan, Pervez Musharraf. Now, Shashi Tharoor has called Musharraf a force of peace.
Do you feel Rahul Gandhi is better? Does he sound better to you?
Yeah, I think he looks a very good gentleman. At least once my mother and my elder brother and my son went to Delhi when I was the president. Rahul invited my son. They had a cup of tea together. Manmohan Singh invited all three of them for lunch.
The same Pervez Musharraf who hailed Taliban and Osama bin Laden as brothers and heroes is being eulogized by the Congress party as a force of peace. This shows the mindset of the Congress. For the Congress, our own Sena Pramukh was a Sadak ka Gunda, but the Sena Pramukh and dictator of Pakistan is a close friend and he is a force of peace for the Congress party. Pervez Musharraf himself had praised Rahul Gandhi, and perhaps this is a return gift by the Congress party by praising and eulogizing him.
Now, the former president of Pakistan, Pervez Musharraf, passed away at the age of 79 in Dubai. The former military ruler passed away after a prolonged illness. He was undergoing treatment at American hospital in Dubai. He was diagnosed with a life-threatening disease in 2018. Now, General Musharraf had left for Dubai in March 2016 for medical treatment and since then did not return to Pakistan. He was declared a fugitive in the assassination case of former Prime Minister Benazir Bhutto and the Red Mosque killing case. Musharraf, who ruled Pakistan from 1999 to 2008, was charged with high treason and was given death sentence in 2019 for suspending the constitution of the country. Musharraf escalated violence in Kashmir. India lost many soldiers after the wars. After the terror attack on the Parliament House in 2001, former Prime Minister of India, Atal Bihari Vajpayee, had threatened Pakistan with military retaliation.
So General Pervez Musharraf was born in 1943. He was 79 years old when he passed away today. He rose to be a four-star general. He was the 10th president of Pakistan, after the 1999 military takeover following the Kargil war. He was the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff Committee from 1998 to 2001, and the 7th Chief of Army Staff from 1998 to 2007. So the 8 years, the 6 years following the September 11th attacks, all the way till 2007, Operation Enduring Freedom, Operation Enduring Freedom in Afghanistan were all happening under Pervez Musharraf's watch. And in those years, Pervez Musharraf traveled the world. He traveled to the United States. He saw that as an opportunity to, build his profile, to recast himself as a truly world leader, de-hyphenated from India, a man with a role in the post 9/11 world, a man who would be seen as a staunch ally of the United States in taking on, the powers that be in Afghanistan that was descending into chaos. He saw himself as a statesman. He saw himself as a military genius who would help the allies, as it were, in Afghanistan. All of that obviously crashed and burned because the Afghan operations were a disaster. Pervez Musharraf, failed to help the United States in any meaningful manner. Ended up converting Afghanistan into a black hole for soldiers from the United States and other countries. Osama bin Laden was finally discovered hiding in Pakistan under Pakistani protection and was killed in a secret operation by the US Navy SEALs in 2011. All of these coming together happened because of the legacy of Pervez Musharraf. He was the man in charge of Pakistan's all-powerful military that looked over what was taking place in Afghanistan as well, the operations that led to the 9/11 terror attacks, the fact that many of the hijackers of the 9/11 planes had visited Pakistan, they had received protection from Pakistan and Afghanistan. There was a Pakistani angle at a time when Pervez Musharraf was the chief of the army staff. None of this can be looked away, and all of these are things that have been mentioned in the 9/11 report. Unfortunately, there was not perhaps enough to completely indict General Pervez Musharraf for his role or his acts of omission and commission that led to 9/11. But I think that has more to do with the fact that the United States saw in General Musharraf in the days after 9/11 a general whose help they saw as indispensable. They needed Musharraf at that time. They needed his okay for many of the things that the United States wanted to do in Afghanistan. And therefore, they couldn't seem to be, going after him with a charge sheet and, indicting him for his supposed role in omission and commission before 9/11. So those are geopolitical complexities that maybe saved General Pervez Musharraf's skin. But I think in his death today, I hope there will be historians, scholars, geopolitical experts who will dig a little deeper and look a little deeper into the manner in which General Pervez Musharraf created Pakistan and crafted into a perfect safe haven, for global terror. He took what was already a sort of petri dish for state-sponsored terror and gave it a kind of industrialized perfection. And that's one of the reasons why 9/11, in some ways, at one level, was possible. The fact that Osama bin Laden, after being hunted for years in Afghanistan, found safe haven in a military cantonment town in Pakistan for, I don't know how many years, tells you everything you need to know about the Pervez Musharraf legacy. Therefore, I think as we go forward to pick up the pieces of this man's broken reputation, look at his legacy, look in the rearview mirror for all the damage that he's done, I think historians are going to have their hands full. They're going to have many years of papers to pick through, look into documents. Hopefully the United States will have a fresh perspective. Hopefully they may even declassify some papers. Every few years documents and cables are declassified, like in the WikiLeaks files. I'm sure there must be pages and pages of classified documents that indict General Pervez Musharraf for his role, both in what happened on 9/11, but also later in making the world a far more dangerous place. Our editorial director of the India Today group, Raj Chengappa, a journalist one of the very few who has met and interviewed General Pervez Musharraf is also live with us. Good afternoon, sir. Thank you for being with us. Your views first, very quickly on the death of Pervez Musharraf today. How do you remember him? You've interviewed him, you've met him, you've covered many of the, that entire phase when he was the both the military and military leader and president of Pakistan. Your views today, sir.
Well, Shiv, I think you've summed it up very well in what you said a little earlier. And, the interesting thing about President Musharraf or Pervez Musharraf or General Musharraf, however you would like to call him, is that there is even towards the end, he had come to the India Today conclave. I've met him first when, just before Agra, he gave me an interview for India Today magazine, just before he came to meet Atal Bihari Vajpayee in this very daring move to try and see whether peace could be brought between the two countries, having been the man of war, as you said earlier. Just in 1999, betrayed his own prime minister, because that's what Mr. Nawaz Sharif, who was then prime minister, told me in an interview, that he did not know that General Musharraf was planning Kargil and had kept him in the dark. Of course, that's a debatable question on that matter. But from that, in this kind of commando fashion that he does, is to try and brazen his way into India. And he spoke to me at that time with a great deal of confidence. And I remember that when we began the interview, I said, he's from the artillery. So I said, my dad was also from the Indian Army in the artillery. And I said, I'm a son of a gunner. And he had a huge laugh. And we chatted more amicably after that, because there was a lot of hostility at the time that I had gone across to Pakistan to interview him. And subsequently as well, President Musharraf stayed in the news even as dictator of Pakistan for almost 7 years that was there. There was, he had two facets to him. One was this kind of tactical, he was a great tactician, if you would like to call it, but very poor at strategic stuff. So, in the initial part of Kargil, and you read his book also that he brought out subsequently, he makes these very tall claims about what he did and how he was stopped by Nawaz Sharif from actually continuing with the war. But the truth was they had lost the war by then. Now, these things he doesn't accept at all, right through his entire years, even when it comes to the conclave, that he was on the back foot, that the things that he did in Kargil, the kind of stuff that he covered up in terms of what happened with Osama bin Laden and Afghanistan, all these issues were something that he would not admit. He would continue to maintain, and that's the facet of this personality. He, on one side, waged war with India, and in the next 7 years, spent a lot of time trying to build bridges with India and bring peace with India. In fact, I recall I've interviewed Satinder Lamba as well, Ambassador Lamba, who was the interlocutor for Dr. Manmohan Singh, and the two sides had reached, along with his counterpart, if I recall, Tariq Aziz, had reached a point just before Pervez Musharraf ran into trouble politically, internally, had reached a point where there was some sort of agreement being worked out between India and Pakistan on Kashmir that could have, brought some solution. Of course, everybody else said that the fact was that it was never made public, and if it had been made public and the reaction on both sides may have completely stalled what they had planned. But that's the contradictions that we see, Shiv. On one side, this man waged huge amount of war, was responsible for a lot of suffering, a lot of unfortunate incidents that happened between the two countries. And on the other side, here was someone who was also trying to build peace with India. And if in terms of running the country itself, Pakistan, in the initial years when I met him, he was very, he wanted to develop Pakistan, and he saw an opportunity in trying to bring a lot of things together. He had a very forward-looking prime minister who was back from the US, I remember, and they were trying to shape the economy. But, the fundamental issues that bogged Pakistan and continue to bog Pakistan even now is that the fact that the army control never loosened. And the moment you had someone like Pervez Musharraf, who was a general who had taken charge through a coup and remained dictator, that situation was not going to, end in any quick manner, as we saw, and continues to persist today.
Raj, in the years following Pervez Musharraf demitting office, in your view, why did he feel the need to leave Pakistan, and what kind of legacy do you think? I know in India it's things tend to be black and white as far as Pakistani leaders are concerned, especially someone as polarizing as Pervez Musharraf. But what kind of reputation and legacy does he leave in Pakistan?
He left power. I mean, to answer your question, I think he fell from power because he misread the entire situation that was happening. He was taking on the judiciary. He was taking on every particular force out there. And he had become highly popular towards the end of his, 6th or 7th year in power.
Yeah.
And at that time, the good thing about it, let's just put it this way, is that Nawaz Sharif comes back. Zardari is there, and they form a national government. And the fact that he did not try to attempt a second coup at that particular point, I think he was too weak in any case to do that. There was a lot of public protest, if I recall. And I went in 2008 to cover that elections with Nawaz Sharif and Zardari combining and forming a national government. So though he did not restrict the powers of the military, he continued to have all the levers of power which even exist today. The fact was that when the crunch time came, he did allow a transition to democracy of whatever kind that you have in Pakistan, and that would, in some senses, be a good legacy of his. There's a lot that went wrong with his whatever he did. And he does not admit it. Even to the end, when he came to the conclave and other places, he continued to maintain that what he did was right in his belief, that he had, that he had worked towards strengthening Pakistan, that India's taking on India was part of that plan. But you see now what has happened in Pakistan is very unfortunate. The civilian powers that are there have never really lived up to the expectations of the voting. So I think you wouldn't just blame the army there. There has been a lot of, lack of sort of governance that is there. You have seen the way Imran Khan ran the country down, and now you're seeing the kind of trouble that Pakistan has. It's unfortunate. I think overall, India wants a stable Pakistan, a Pakistan that does not indulge in terrorist acts. It wants to see a prosperous Pakistan, because a prosperous Pakistan is in India's interest, just as any neighbor around us. Unfortunately, that situation has not been reached either during President Musharraf's time, subsequent to that during the Zardari rule, as well as Mr. Nawaz Sharif's rule and Imran Khan's rule. We have not seen that kind of development, unfortunately.
Mr. Chengappa, appreciate your time. Thank you very much for joining us. One of the few journalists who had actually interviewed Pervez Musharraf, met him, during the India Today conclave, covered his entire time as dictator of Pakistan and then president.
You are watching India Today.
The government of India plays down Adani stocks crisis. Union Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman on Saturday asserted that India's micro fundamentals and image will remain unaffected by the crash in Adani Group firms' share